The grandeur and scope of RPG games has never been greater, with technology finally catching up to creators' dreams, enabling massive open worlds like never before. So lovely adventurer, please assemble your companions before we depart. I'm Azure Wings from Azure Gaming Lounge, and we're going to watch the second installment of great RPGs to play in 2022. In many respects, it's a broken mess, yet it is as, if not more, timeless than everything else here. This pen and paper rendition of the modern-day Vampires pen and paper RPG is steeped in sex, squalor, terror, and manipulation, and despite certain pulp sensibilities, it nevertheless gets to areas that other mainstream games would not dare to go. Other vampire fiction does not dare to go. Though it has a particularly good haunted house scenario and the ability to play as someone with a capital K crazy, it's the game's dark investigation of sex, domination, and reliance that stands out. This, more than the blatant horror components, is what makes Bloodlines Santa Monica such a nasty and unsettling location, and one where you may play with your own dark side. If you've ever been disappointed by the progression of JRPGs and wondered, why can't things simply stay the same like the good old days, then Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age is the game for you. Despite being the 11th game in the series, the majority of which have never been released on PC, Echoes of an Elusive Age is as vintage and conventional as they get. Playing Dragon Quest XI now is like playing a 20-year-old JRPG. Sure, the graphics are prettier, the orchestral music is more stirring, and the world itself is much more open and expansive than almost every other Dragon Quest game combined, but peel away that gleaming 2018 veneer, and its epic tale of a world-consuming evil and simple turn-based combat will have you cooing about the good old days in no time. Indeed, the only significant new features introduced to Dragon Quest XI by Square Enix were a free camera option and some horse riding, those crazy mavericks, which should give you an indication of how slow-moving this game has been over the years. Still, the tenacity with which Square Enix has stuck to their guns here is impressive. In this version, you play Vaughn, a scrappy orphan robber who aspires to make it big in the world. Following a fortuitous meeting with a rebel princess and a pair of sky pirates, he embarks on his big journey, escaping the wicked empire as they attempt to restore Ash to the throne. It takes a while to get going, but once you get into the guts of its semi-real-time, semi-turn-based combat, it truly comes into its own. 12's Gambit system basically allows you to program your other party members to perform whatever you desire. It's similar to the strategies used in Dragon Age Origins. The Gambit system also offers you a lot more leeway in creating the characters you choose. Unlike Final Fantasy X Sphere Grid, there are no apparent avenues for shaping your characters here, which means you may screw yourself up early on if you don't know what you're doing, but it also allows you to build some fascinating class combinations later on if you select your skills properly. The Zodiac Age also adds some significant quality of life upgrades to this somewhat elderly PS2 classic, like a fast-forward button that allows you to combat and run around town in double quick speed, a 60 frames per second frame rate, ultra-wide compatibility, and better resolutions. It's not the first Final Fantasy we'd suggest to newbies, but it's one of the most enjoyable and fascinating titles available on PC today. New Vegas creates a more realistic setting than any previous Fallout game. Whereas the previous games in the post-nuclear series were filled with color and flavor but lacked in concept, Obsidian's vision of the wasteland draws influence from Chinatown's water battles and the Great Western Land Grab. It examines how and why people would battle to exist in a location that is, at best, unfriendly to human survival and, at worst, hostile to human survival, and it places the player character in the burned-out remnants of an area that was already parched before the bombs dropped. There's an attempt to make sense of the strange mix of cultures and styles that has become a trademark of Fallout's universe, and it's all wrapped up in a plot, engine, and reputation system that is flexible enough to allow for free-form role-playing inside its devastated areas. The goal of Monster Hunter World is to be the most fashionable beast slayer in the jungle. It contains a tale campaign about capturing a colossal beast, as well as some dubious ecological activities. However, this is a good turn-your-brain-off trudge over a complex environment, full of slow, meticulous brawls with huge animals, after which you gather their heads to wear as bone helmets. There is so much equipment to make. You'll need scaly knee pads, enormous hammers, and pulley slingshots to track down and tranquilize a large fire-breathing T-Rex. There are 14 distinct major weapons, and each one handles differently, frequently affecting how you'll conduct your whole quest. When you come across a new species, half lizard, half jaguar, all that fades away like a puff of tranquilizer gas, and another lengthy war starts. Final Fantasy X is one of the most well-known Final Fantasy titles. Final Fantasy X-2, its immediate successor, is little less well-loved, but you may as well sing along to its pop-infused plot of doppelganger ghosts and girl band power songs when it's included in Square Enix's latest HD restoration. Despite not being as deep or emotionally wrenching as its lauded predecessor, X-2's class-swapping battle system remains one of the most intriguing combat puzzles in recent Final Fantasy games, evolving the groundwork laid down in Final Fantasy V, and paving the way for what came later in Final Fantasy XIII. We're really stamping our feet for Final Fantasy X, since this epic narrative of boy meets girl, girl meets terrifying lizard priest, girl almost gets devoured by scary world-ending whale metaphor is a genuine classic for our times. Sure, the narrative seems insane when explained, but believe us on this, it's absolutely great. Once again, its great fight system contributes to its brilliance. While each character is natively equipped for a certain class, Final Fantasy X Sphere Grid allows you to shape your party any way you choose, transforming mages into fighters and warriors into support troops. Sure, you might argue that Final Fantasy VII is the absolute bestest best, or that Final Fantasy IX maintains the series' nostalgic origins while still providing a great tale, but let's face it, a lot of the Final Fantasy games look a little fugly on PC. Don't travel to Prague today since it's swamped with inebriated visitors. Travel to the future Prague, where the crackdown on absinthe-fueled British hooligans has passed the baton to individuals wielding metal swords as weapons. Mankind Divided, as a sometimes stealthy, sometimes shooty immerso sim, does not achieve anything that is significantly different from its predecessor, Human Revolution. It's still a sci-fi RPG about lurking through city vents and scaring tiny business owners. And it's still a characterless wall of conspiracy theories with a bland, gruff man who didn't ask for this. The true star, though, is the city of Prague, not the gruff-voiced Adam Jensen. Almost every building has many access points. The streets are littered with doors that can be opened, or walls that can be broken through. If breaking into every flat in your apartment building violates your ethical code, then your ethical code is probably 0451. Use it. Your first venture into Palisade Property Bank will point you in the right direction. On the surface, this appears to be a sci-fi action game, but it's basically about being an expensive metal burglar. So, start stealing. Yakuza Like a Dragon marks a new beginning for the franchise, with two significant alterations. 1. It abandons the previous game's action brawling in favor of a new turn-based fighting system, and 2. It replaces WrestleDad protagonist Kiryu Kazuma with puppyish newcomer Ichiban Kasuga. This is an excellent moment to begin playing the endearing series. Despite the modifications, Like a Dragon has everything that made prior games great, and it's still a fun voyage into Japan's underground. Ichiban is younger and less serious than Kiryu, and his jovial demeanor rapidly earns him allies throughout the city of Yokohama. These buddies form an RPG-style team, assisting you in battles and other situations, and they're a friendly group, including ex-detective Adachi, a former nurse who can conjure crows named Nanba, and Siko, a tough hostess club manager. Despite being situated in a criminal underworld with flick blades and popped collars, a Yakuza game lacks intensity. Ichiban aspires to be a hero and spends much of his time helping his friends and others in the city. You can take on unusual occupations, such as making Ichiban a dancer or Siko a J-pop idol. Even the fights are primarily ridiculous, as you combat city slickers who literally drip with oil and smack you with lilos. Like a Dragon is more of an RPG than ever before, yet it's still Yakuza all the way. Landscape and what we'll term choiciness are two things that Elder Scrolls games excel at. Skyrim offers enough of both. Skyrim is a lot more intriguing environment to explore than Oblivion, which was criticized for being too traditional fantasy. Huge mountains with snow-covered summits tumble into woods, marshes, bogs, and ice caves, and each town and city is distinct. It's a game where you want to go on an adventure, and you might feel like you're on a magnificent journey just by attempting to walk from one end of the planet to the other. Bethesda's continuous effort to blanket their universe with a dozen equally fascinating activities explains the pickiness. Yes, you are the Dragonborn, the one and only, and it is up to you to rescue the world, but there is also a Mage's Guild to lead, a Fighter's Arena to conquer, the Homicidal Dark Brotherhood to join, and so on. None of these activities are as detailed as they would be in a more concentrated game, but the range and amount of possible experiences is the whole purpose. Skyrim is a game to get lost in, then there are the modifications, of course. It's unusual for Elder Scrolls games to receive tens of thousands of updates from their fans, but keep in mind how remarkable it is that Skyrim's fans have written entire new quest lines, rebalanced combat, introduced new genres, and prettified the entire world far beyond what Bethesda could hope to accomplish on their own. If you purchase Skyrim now, you may be playing it for the next decade. That's all for today. Please subscribe, like, and leave a comment on what is your favorite RPG to play. Stay safe, stay cool.